Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Sakil. I'm a Youth Justice Board Member and we're at the YJB. I have the privilege to be having a conversation today with Ricky Otto and I met you at the Youth Justice Summit in February. And I must say, I wish I had more time to ask you a lot more questions. So hopefully today's the day where I can ask you so much more.
Yeah, listen, Jacob, thank you for having me here. It's been a privilege and I know this has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
So we're finally here. So you've got the time. You're definitely privileged. But so am I to be here to do this podcast. So listen, I don't know how it's going to end up, but we're going to get there together, yeah?
Sounds like a plan.
All right,
My first question that I just have to ask you, because you got a bit of a twinge in your accent. So
okay.
you got to tell me where you started. Like, where was you growing up, born, and where's your roots from?
Yeah, I grew up in Hackney, East London. And I'm the middle child. I've got two brothers, older and younger, raised by my mum. And yeah, Hackney was a tough place to be raised in, but it kind of helped shape a lot of who I am today. But the accent that you're hearing now is, I've been living in Birmingham now for the last 30 years. So my kind of a Cockney accent has kind of diminished slightly as I've been living in the city of Birmingham, where when they talk, they kind of sing.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. And I just think before we get into what you're doing right now, just thinking about Ricky growing up in Hackney, what type of world was you living in and what experiences you had growing up?
Yeah, growing up was eventful. Like I said, at school, I would say I was misunderstood. That's my cue. But no, really, I think educationally, academically wise, I was good. I was always one of the pupils that finished my work early, but I was a little bit of a cheeky chappy. And so while I'm waiting for everyone else to finish their work, I would be kind of putting everyone else off, flinging rubber, flicking paper, stuff like that. And getting into that kind of trouble. But if I'm honest, when I kind of got to about, I say teenage years, but it was probably before that. Growing up as a youth, it's very competitive for boy childs, I think. Everything we do is who's the best at it, who's the fastest runner, who can throw the stone the longest, who's the most dareable to climb up buildings and stuff like that. And because I played football as well, I was very good at football. From an early age, as young as 10 years of age, I was at Tottenham Schoolboys.
Was that the career you was trying to go into?
Well, if I'm honest with you, I wasn't even thinking about a career. I was just naturally good at football. I mean, I was 8 years of age playing for the fourth year boys in primary school. Do you know what I mean? So by the time I got to 10 years of age, I was playing for Hackney, I was playing for London. So my pedigree as a football was phenomenal. And so a lot of the times I would love to play football, but then I had a violent streak. So I didn't even know how to deal with losing. So if I lost, someone has to kind of pay for the loss because I was that good. So I found my school years was a mixture of finishing my work good. I was academically sound, but then I would be, putting other pupils off. And then in the playground, it was a bit of I started to develop this kind of a bully mentality and fighting, and just got a reputation for looking after myself. And that kind of transcended into my secondary school years, where now, when I was growing up in the 80s, that's when we was exposed to Space Invaders for the first time. And all these cafes around London were growing everywhere with Space Invaders. But Space Invaders is no good to a man that's rock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you still need 10 pence to go and play the game.
So just thinking about that, because I'm just wondering, before you reading your story and learning about you, certain things just jumped out straight away to me in terms of like making money.
Yeah.
And trying to find your feet as a young man.
Yeah.
What was the first experiences you had around that?
My first experience, it was, like I said, the early 80s, Space Invaders. There's cafes now that's having Space Invaders. So go in school at lunchtime, you can go to the cafes and play all the Space Invader games. Now remember, from primary school, you're never allowed out of the school playground.
Yeah.
So when you go to secondary school now, there's a little bit of freedom.
Boy,
So you don't have to have school dinners.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I always had school dinners, and school dinners was nice, can't lie. But I wanted my own school dinners. Back then it was chips and crackling.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But all that cost money. At the time, I think it was 15 pence. But as I said, I grew up in a single parent home. So, we didn't have none of those luxuries. So for me, getting that money was taking it from other pupils.
Okay.
And when I realised that there are some benefits to kind of bullying man and getting money, sometimes I was bullying man until I was getting maybe £3-4 a day. So in one sense, I'm building up reputation as a bully and taking man's money, but I was only doing it because I wanted chip, butter and crackling, and I wanted to play Space Invaders.
So did that experiences that you had, did it lend to anything in terms of the friends you kept around you?
Of course, because the thing about it, I was never easily led. So in my narrative, there's never been one where I was led astray. I was a kind of a leader. And again, I was only doing it so I can have those pleasures to just have school dinners outside the school and play Space Invaders. But what happened now, I started to develop a mindset where, hey, there's benefits to this. You know, we know there's not benefits to it, but at the time as a young 12, 13-year-old, there was benefits to this because I actually like that kind of a notoriety when people are frightened and they're scared of you, and when you come in, you can take liberties. And so that increased. So therefore, you're only going to start hanging around with the same like-minded people, because if you keep getting flung out of school, eventually you're just left with time on your hands as a young person who's not in education. You're kicked out of mainstream school. And I think for me, that kind of exposure to there's benefits to crime escalated now, because at the age of 14, you're starting to be a little bit more aware of yourself. You know, you want to wear the right sprays, wear the right clothes, girls are looking nice, you want to go to the disco, but you ain't got no money to wear the nice trainers, to wear the nice clothes. So for me, my appetite to kind of get money by any means necessary increased now, because the older guys who were like 17, when they kind of told us to just watch out for them, they were doing a burglary, and they just told us to watch out for them. And just by watching out, they came back and gave us 75 quid. That was it.
So thinking about criminality, and you know, right now you're changing the lives of young people my age and younger, and that's amazing. And I know that it took a long time for you to get there, but clearly this was a journey where you was in control and you made choices for yourself. But you mentioned your mom, and I'm really close to my mother. I love my mother. And one of the things you said about coming to London and when she moved to Birmingham was a bit different. How was your relationship with your mom at that time when you were out there, obviously trying to hustle?
It wasn't good, because I think no parent raises their children to start doing the things that I was doing, committing crime, bringing police to the front door. And so, you know, our relationship was very fraught because of that. And I get that. Like I said, when I got to the age of like maybe 15, my mum weren't having it no more, because what I wanted to do is bring home stolen goods into the house. And remember, I didn't grow up with no father. So my mum had to be mum and dad and be tough. Yeah. And so if my mum lost control of the house, then it's game. Yeah. So my mum had to kick me out, because what I wanted to do, she weren't tolerating it. And so, those turbulent years for me, like 14, 15, up until 19, me and my relationship with my mum wasn't good. But I understand why.
Do you understand it now, you know, as a person who...
No, I understood it then. I understood it then. Yeah. But, you know, when you're young, you feel that you can just get away with these things. And when your parents are putting a stop to it, you know, I didn't fight it. When my mum kicked me out, you know, I had more than enough places where I can kind of be at cousins that I can stay at their houses. But again, you have to remember, from when I hit 17, the moment I hit 17, then I started to go in and out of young offenders institutions. So, well, the funny thing is, like I said, from 15 to 16, every time I was going juvenile court, because again, there was benefits to committing crime. But then at my 17th birthday, and I remember this because my birthday's in November the 9th, and I had to go back to court on the 14th of November 1984. And at that time, my reputation was increasing, right? I had a few of my friends who's gone to detention centres and come out, and stupidly, I thought, well, I need to test myself. Because if I can handle doing a little bit of time, then boy, my reputation is going to go through the roof. So actually, when I went to court on the 14th of November, they wanted to give me a community service. But foolishly, I said, I ain't doing no community service. I ain't cleaning no one's house or cleaning no street. So the judge was like, you know what you're talking about, boy? I was like, yeah. I ain't doing no community service. Yeah. And so they gave me 25 months to run concurrent, which is just a 5-month sentence. And I felt I was ready for this at the time. You know, I wanted to go in there and build up my reputation after 2 weeks. I want to go home, man. I don't want to be here no more, man. Sure. Because I'm talking to guys now who have been inside like 3-4 times. I'm like, are you stupid, fam? Yeah. 3-4 times. After this time, I'm done. Yeah. But what I realize is that once you now start to have that entry into young offence institution, it's almost like every time you step up in court, now you're going on remand. Because actually, from 17 years of age, that first sentence, I ended up going back to prison 5 times. And my last sentence was the 4 years where I served in adult prison. So, yeah, there was elements where your ego, you're young, you want to test yourself, your reputation's going through the roof. And sometimes when you're heavily entrenched in that lifestyle, you can't really see the wood from the trees.
Yeah.
You're just so engrossed in it. And so that was life for me. And so whether I go inside or not, you always know man from road and you're making new connections from different areas. Mind you, it's not like how it is today. All this post-Cold Wars, it wasn't like that back then. So you could make friends with man from south, east, west, it didn't make no difference. But at that time, it's all about kind of, can I come out a little bit more sophisticated in terms of the kind of crimes that I want to do because I want to make money. And like I said, I just remember being so heavily entrenched in that lifestyle. And so when you get released, you're coming back on the road, you know, your chest is a little bit big because you've been pushing some weight and all that respect, you love that. And so sometimes when I'm working with a lot of these youths, I get it, where they're at.
So just thinking, because now you're a resettlement practitioner in Walsall, you're doing a lot more work. You're a mentor. You know what I mean. You're a leader. People are looking up to you. And we talked earlier. You're a father as well. You know, you were saying that your children's around my age. So you've walked the walk in terms of being a dad, and I'm sure that changes your perspective. But what similarities you were just mentioning that you see with the young people you're working with right now to where you had to make that change for yourself? It said, you know what, listen, enough's enough. I got to do something different.
The truth of the matter is, like I said, so some of them it's their first time in secure estate. But for me, when I decided to turn my life around or do something about it, you've got to remember, this is my 5th time in prison. And actually, I'm serving a 4-year sentence. So the other time I got the 5 months, I was out. Then I got 8 months and done 5 months out. The 8 months was out. And then there was 2 remands come out. And then the 4 years, what I got, that sentence was different because the 4 other times I was inside, I was with people my own age. And I tend to find when you're around people your own age, even if you're good at something, no one is really trying to encourage you to do better. Everyone wants to keep you to themselves in our group because if you've got reputation, we want to be bad together. So I was good at football. And like I said, my prison experience was not like most people. You know, because I was a cheeky chap. I never fought the system. I've never been manhandled by police officers, never been manhandled by prison officers. I was cheeky chappy, but a likeable one.
So you had charisma?
I used to play football for the prison officers.
Okay.
Sunday. So my prison experience wasn't bad, if I'm honest. But the difference was when I went to Wandsworth prison after I got my sentence for 4 years, I just turned 21. So now I'm going to serve my sentence with adult prison. And as per normal, any institution I go to, I will play football. And whoever is the football king of that prison, where your title's gone, right? I went to Wandsworth and do the same thing that I normally do. But it was in Wandsworth 2 days later, 2 men come to my cell. One was doing 24 years for murder, the other one was doing 17 for manslaughter. And they come to my cell and said, they want to talk to me. Now, I don't know you. So when a man says they want to come and talk to you and come into your cell, you know, you start preparing for the worst and you start, you know what I mean? Because they still want to talk. So I'm saying, what do you want to talk about? They said, no, let me come to your cell. I'm just like, well, you know, just listen, we just want to talk to you, sit down. Anyway, the conversation transpired that they said, listen, we was in the gym 2 days ago watching you play football. Because if you're on my team, you're going to get ready to win all 7 games on the trot. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And they says, we ain't seen such talent like that before. What are you doing there? How old are you? Whatever. And at the time I said, I'm just 17, just got a 4-year sentence, and try to kind of laugh off the conversation a little bit. But they were like, nah, fam, honestly, we don't consider ourselves to be talented or nothing. But you, that's a different breed of football that I've seen that I ain't never seen. And they said to me, you can make it, you know. They said, don't serve the time. Let the time serve you. And when they said that, I understood straight away what they were saying. They were saying, don't just sit down in prison and gaze out your days and do nothing. And then when you're about to get released, think about what you want to do. But start preparing yourself now. And that was it. There was a light bulb moment switch, Jacob. Because you know what? I didn't grow up with no dad. I didn't have no positive male role models in my life. My peers were my role models. Yeah. But they wanted to keep me with them because it's all reputation. Sometimes you know you're good at something. But what I've come to realize is sometimes we need affirmation.
Yeah.
And when you get that affirmation, then you can run through brick walls. Because as soon as a man that said that to me, that was it. I just became a gym orderly. I just started focusing on football because I knew I was good.
Do you think it was something, Paul? Was there something there seeing the boys, they were older than you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I would say that's your first experience of like a mentor or somebody who cared enough as a male to speak into your life.
Absolutely.
So how did that not only work for you, but it works into who you are now as that mentor and that?
Oh, because listen, the work that I do now, I'm using the same mantra. Because I still believe that everyone is talented, gifted, or interested in something. My job is to find out what you're good at, what you like, what's your interest, what's your gift. Because ultimately, I'm singing the same song today. Don't serve the time, let the time serve you. I'm trying to get them to see what transformation looks like. Do you know what I mean? That you don't have to let your past dictate your future. So
yeah, you talk about that, and we was talking about mentorship. Just thinking about overrepresentation and the constant conversation we're having, where black boys and mixed heritage boys are in the youth justice system.
Yeah.
What is your view on that? Like, why do you feel that's happening? And is there a role there for black fathers, black mentors to be in that space and be reflective of what change could be?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's so many things that I think that contributes to the overrepresentation. You know what I mean? So I think when we're looking at the disproportionality of black and mixed heritage youth in prisons and in the criminal justice system, we have to understand that, like, you know, the policing has a lot to do with it. Do you know what I mean? The relationship between community and police has never been good in all my years growing up. And so a lot of that is still happening.
So just actually, what do you think about black boys becoming police officers, becoming magistrates, trying to be judges, and, you know, entering that space for those people who have an impact on the amount of black and mixed heritage boys we see in the youth justice system? Because they're the ones that are effectively putting the sentence in there. And some people may argue, you know, rightly so, if you're doing a crime, you got to do the time. But is there a space there in terms of those young people and those of mixed heritage and black heritage going into those places of careers?
Because I think there needs to be more black people, not the token one or two. We need to balance the scales, because in my mind, when I think of equality, I'm saying make it equal. Equal in numbers. But unfortunately, oftentimes, even though black people want to hit those spaces, we're still coming up against certain oppression or certain attitudes that you can only go so far. But still, where decisions are made, we're not at those tables. So what happens is that, yeah, we'll get in there and we're trying to make a difference, but actually, oftentimes, those people who are trying to make a difference are now still facing racism from their own work colleagues. Or the system is not flexible enough for them to be able to make that change.
Now, I definitely taken a lot of what you're saying. I think me as a board member, being the youngest board member as well, and taking up this position, for me, when I tell people what I do, they're like, "What is that? Like, what do you mean? What is a board member?" Some people only hear that on television, like, unless they're in that world. How do you make roles like this cool for those young people that you're working with to say, you know what, you should go for those spaces and occupy those conversations?
I think we're all individuals. Just be who you are. Do you know what I mean? Because I think in order to make change, you know, a lot of these youth I'm working with, they're not stupid. Or they may have done stupid things. And they're sitting inside and they're sitting and doing time. But don't be fooled. These guys are smart. They're switched on. They're bright. And they can suss you in 20 minutes. And so if you're trying to play a role here, they can suss that out. So for me, I think, yes, it's important. We do need more representation right across the board. And I don't just mean representation in the service, but like you said, beyond the board. Because your lived experience is going to be probably completely different than many of the other board members. And all lived experience is key in order to kind of, you know, use that kind of African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. I still think it takes a village to be able to help these guys to turn their life around. But be yourself. Be authentically yourself. And don't get too bougie just because you're sitting at tables, you know, around the corner from Westminster. Remember who you are, and remember who you are and what you've done in your life is what the service needs. Because when the madam see you like that, now they can say, well, if he can do it, so can I. But you've got to be yourself.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful. And I'm just thinking, you on the ground doing your everyday job, do you feel there's a difference in terms of the needs of black children in the community compared to when they're in custody?
I don't know if I would say that the needs are different, because I feel like the needs are great, period. So I'm realizing with my work, it's nuanced. Yes, I'm working with them to try and get them to see how they can move their life forward, but what are they coming out to?
Yeah.
Because if they're coming out to the same dysfunction and there's no work being done where they're coming out to, they're easy pickings to be able to go back into old behaviours. Because you know what it's like, man. You come out of prison for the first 2 weeks, it's like you're God's gift. Everyone's helping, give you a little change here, and you feel good. Yeah. But after that 2 weeks, it's over. Yeah. You're wearing clothes that are 3 years old. Yeah. A man's flossing different. And if you're not careful, if you ain't got a plan, if you ain't got certain mentors around you, boy, just doing that one quick run, to Colchester back, get a little 1,800 quid. It's tempting.
The difference of some people.
Yeah, because you're hungry. Yeah. You're broke. Sometimes the electrics run out. Mum might not even have the £10 to go and get the electric. And so a lot of the times, these young guys, if they're not having no father figures, they're trying to be fathers in their teenage years. And no child should ever take on the responsibility of a man. So for me, I don't think the work is different. It's just nuance.
Yeah. So Ricky, just thinking about community. I know a lot of times when we hear that word, in my opinion, I feel like it's really ambiguous. There's so many definitions you can give to that. And I think, especially when they talk about the black community, I'm like, who are you speaking about? You're talking about, the Nigerians, the Ghanaians, the Caribbeans. And even then, we have our own specific nuances within black culture. What does that mean for us in terms of their responsibility to support our young children who are experiencing, the youth justice system?
Yeah, I think the responsibility is huge. And when I think back, 20 years ago, there was a lot of good, excellent community initiatives, organizations that were doing some great work. But unfortunately, a lot of those organizations, they weren't using the money as they should have. Some of it, I won't say a lot, some of it was going to their own gains when it should have been going towards what they profess to do within the community. And I think over the years we've seen with changes of governments and the cuts that now a lot of communities are struggling to get the funding because there's only a small pot to access. And sometimes you tend to find that the smaller community organizations that are doing some of the greatest work are not getting to the tables to access some of the money because, there's some bigger community organizations. They always seem to kind of get to the money first, or it's a case of it's not what you know, it's who you know. So I feel like there's a lot of small community organizations that are doing the work and doing some great work and probably need more help accessing the money so they can continue the work. But I think in terms of responsibility, it's huge. And I think in what we do in trying to raise aspirations and to build safer communities and to, help families to access some of the things, resources that can help them to develop, it's gonna take all the different community partnerships to come together with all their different skills, lived experiences, to come to the table. Because what I may be good at one thing, I need another organisation to come and do something. For instance, a lot of the youths that I'm working with, they're traumatised.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
What does that look like? Because sometimes when people say trauma, PTSD, lived experience, can you give me just a short scenario of what that trauma how it shows up, just to talk to people who might be listening to this? Because I think if you're not there, if you're not you, and you haven't been through it yourself, you don't really get how detrimental these things could be.
Trauma, when I'm working with some of these youths and they're having to incubate seeing their friends being shot, stabbed, dead, and not being able to work through all those emotions. And then there is this kind of a view that, can't show our emotions, because for most men, when we show emotions, it makes us feel vulnerable. And most young people don't like to feel vulnerable. So what happens? We mask that vulnerability by demonstrating our male masculinity and come out swinging and fighting. But really, when we look at the root cause of some of these guys' actions, you can peel it back to they're dealing with trauma and they don't really know how to process the trauma that they've experienced. They don't know how to regulate their emotions. So sometimes the only thing they know how to do is just come out fighting. And I'm learning that a lot of these guys are traumatized. They're carrying trauma from their childhood. You know what I mean? If there's been abuse in the house, if they've seen their mother being abused in the house. So this trauma is huge. And although I may be good at motivating, inspiring youth and helping them to see, well, actually, I can do something with my life. What I've already realised is that some of these guys, they need therapy.
Yeah.
They need therapy. And actually, because I've been with these guys, sat with them guys, and they understand my story, I can now kind of start talking about the emotional side of what they're going through because they trust me. And they trust that actually, listen, emotions are real, but it's how we regulate them. And so with a couple of guys that I'm working with, they're almost at that stage where they're open to the idea of having therapy because in their mind, they think therapy is for madman.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say to them, nah, therapy ain't just for mad people.
Yeah, it's for
right?
everyone.
Therapy is for everyone. And a lot of what you're going through is difficult, it's huge. And we have to remember, a lot of them are still children in care. They're still children. And they're having to carry some weight.
I think that's powerful. We talk about adultification.
Absolutely.
And that's the word that's used. But
absolutely.
We've experienced it in our communities for generations.
Yeah.
Of being told that you look older.
Yeah.
You act older, therefore you're treated in a certain type of way.
Well, think about it. I mean, a lot of these children, they're having to do adult things if they're at home. You know what I mean? Keeping the house running. Do you know what I mean? Because if the mum is at work and things need to be done around the home, they're doing chores that an adult should do. So they're losing their childhood because of not being able to have the help or the resources to be able to run a home. Or if the mum is struggling and they ain't got much money. Do you know what I mean? A lot of these children are carrying that trauma. They're carrying the trauma of what the mum's gone through. You know what I mean? The lack of care. And so that kind of a mindset is a mindset of a man. They're trying to do a man's role in a child's body.
Yeah.
It's traumatic. And then you have to deal with the loss of a friend, stabbing. And so sometimes a lot of these guys, they're doing life sentences because they want revenge. And so it's revenge attack. It's all traumatic. And that trauma can eat you up because these are children. They still don't know how to regulate their emotions. Yeah. So I think from a community perspective, there's so much more that communities can do when we come together to be able to say, right, this is what we can do. This is what we can do. This is what we can do. And I hope that the government maybe need to release more money because it still takes funds for us to be able to function because a lot of these communities, you know, they're renting out buildings. They need to get materials, resources to be able to engage with the communities. So it's a huge job.
Yeah. I think I remember reading something on Instagram where there's a woman, she went viral because she bought her son flowers. And she just said it's no special occasion, but when she grew up in her family, she realized black men only get flowers at their funeral for the most part, or when they're sick for the most part. So she just wanted to celebrate him. And just thinking about you being a dad, I'm a dad myself, and I'm learning a lot every day. I realize now being a parent, like you do not have a rule book. Like you literally figure it out as you go. Do you see yourself as a father figure to the young people that you're working with? And has that made it easier for you to see it through the lens of a dad now? You know, the fact that you've been a father, or does it add an extra burden because you feel a sense of responsibility for more?
It doesn't add a burden. Well, you know what? Before I started getting grey hair, I could have run it as a brotherly figure. Yeah. Because that's what I tried to do. Yeah. You know, I could come side as a big bro. Yeah. But my grey hair is giving me away. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So they're calling me Pops. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I've had to just adorn that kind of title because I can't get away with big bro. But yeah, the thing about it, and again, you have to remember, and I'm keeping it 100 and transparent, I haven't always been a best father. Because remember, let's not get hoodwinked with, okay, I came out of prison and started to play football and I lived a fantastic life in football. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? On the surface, yeah, life was great, but there were still dysfunctions that I had to deal with. So by the time I now started having children, I still had to grow into what fatherhood looked like because I'd never had a dad myself. You know what I mean? So I feel more like a father now because I've grown up, I've matured. Do you know what I mean? And I've had to understand that the words that I speak, what I stand for is key because most of the guys, they ain't got no father figure. They don't know their dad. And if they do know their dad, that dad is still shot in, that dad is still up to no good. So it's not a role model for that individual.
And someone's scared to father. You know, like just not being able to know how to do it. Therefore, I'm going to stay away because it might be better.
The thing about it is, when you're a father, you have to be comfortable with who you are. And part of that role is you have to be comfortable with your emotions. Because love, do you know what I mean? Love is nuance, but you've always got to be loving on your children. You've always got to be showing love and showing respect and tough love, all of that. But when you've not been shown it, when it's not been demonstrated to you, again, what we do in our tough love, sometimes it could be too tough. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And therefore, the lines of communication get blurred, because sometimes when it's a case where you just need to recognize that, you know what, son, come, let me give you a hug. Well, we've not been taught to do that. So when a man thinks like that, again, it takes him into a vulnerable space. And 9 times out of 10, even man my age, when you start talking about emotions, because they've not been taught how to share their emotions, they get vulnerable. And when men feel vulnerable, they get scared and they look back into their male masculinity, machoism. And so we can see that oftentimes these children, when I'm working with them, my goal is to take them into a space where we have to talk about emotions. Now, I'm very fortunate because I've lived the experience. I know what it's like to sit behind a prison cell. I can share my experiences to let them know, listen, it's okay to have emotions in a family. It's okay to be angry. Anger is a natural emotion. It's what we do with it that makes it destructive. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm not saying that, you're behind your cell door crying. No, but you're thinking. You know what I mean? And it's, like I said, some of these guys I'm working with, they're doing life for murder. And so, it takes a couple of years before they start to realize, actually, I ain't coming out for a long time. And while they're maturing, going from children to now maturing, now they're starting to really acknowledge what they've done, the length of their sentence. And so I've got to be there, not just me. I think more male role models need to be there, because when these guys are now dealing with those emotions, we need men who are comfortable with their emotions to help navigate these children. Because this is what I'm realizing now, is that like when they start to realize what they've done and they don't know how to deal with their emotions, they can be self-harming themselves because there's guilt and there's shame. Then there's the suicide watch because they realize, gosh man, I've still got like 15 years before I'm even considered for parole. So a lot's happening with these children in care who are doing life sentences. And so for me, my goal is always to kind of make sure I create a space where emotions is part of the premise of what we're doing here. Because a lot of these guys, they're masking how they're really feeling. And my role is to try and draw it out of them. But I have to build relationships with these guys. And when they trust you for life. And so I've got to be able to handle that space with them, because it's unfamiliar to them as well, because they've not had an older male role model that's coming to them that way. But when I'm doing the work, you can see that's what's needed. Yeah. They need it because they've never had it.
What does that do for you though? Because I think a lot of times when we do the work and we know what we're trying to give to young people, I would hope that even those who are listening feel like they know what the benefit is for those young people. But what would you say is the benefit for you for being in this space? The
benefit for me is, when I look back on my journey, the moment I started playing football, I realised that, Rick, this ain't right, because it's not normal for a man to come out of 5 different sentences and then start playing football for a living. And I mean, I played football for 10 years and it was a fantastic life, a great achievement. I achieved my boyhood dream. Now I went from signing gyros to signing autographs. And I lived that life. But I realized in that moment that this success don't mean nothing if I ain't trying to give something back. That success can only mean something if I'm going back doing the work that I'm doing to show these guys that, listen, I was you and I turned it around. And if I can do it, so can you. Don't serve the time, let the time serve you. That football experience don't mean nothing, and the prison experience don't mean nothing if I ain't doing something now to give them, man, a real bird's eye view of what transformation looked like. Just remember what we're working towards, to make safer communities, to make, our children be able to live in safe homes, and not be exposed to exploitation, and really just to kind of increase what we're doing now, sort of thing.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I think you spoke on so many different points that we can talk forever about. But one thing is really, really true in my mind, having this conversation, is that you more than care, you show up. And I think that's really powerful. So as a board member and a father to another, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure, honestly.
Brilliant.
Thank you.